Welcome back here today on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College. Getting ready for football season. Here it is, not even summertime yet. We've just barely gotten into spring. We've got a football jamboree coming up soon. I think it's May 18th. You're going to want to watch for that one. Lots coming up. We've got the Watermelon Festival. We've got the Possum Festival. Lots of hot weather yet to complain about. Our guest today is Margo Lamb from Emerald Coast Hospice. Typically, sitting in this seat this morning would have been Sunshine Spears. She's been coming every month talking about Emerald Coast Hospice. We're excited. We've got Margo. She's no stranger to the show, been on the show before. Get the opportunity today to talk a little bit more in depth about Emerald Coast Hospice from the volunteer side with Margo. Also coming up this summer is their bereavement camp. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Maybe something, if you've got a young person in your life, that you might be able to take advantage of. We'll talk about all this and more with Margo when we come back, and we will be right back. Welcome back here today on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College. We've got an old friend of the show here today, Margo Lamb from Emerald Coast Hospice. Typically, sitting in that seat would be Sunshine Spears, comes every month, talks about Emerald Coast Hospice, more importantly, what they do in the community, the special events in which they're involved. Today, and I consider it a treat, Margo is going to talk a little bit about, from the volunteerism side, about Emerald Coast Hospice. Also coming up this summer, their bereavement camp. This is one you're probably going to want to pay attention to. Emerald Coast, a huge part of the fabric of this community. We appreciate everything they do. In this case, that bereavement camp being something that will just really tug at your heartstrings, a very positive, uplifting message at the end of the day, one that we could not do without, and we appreciate Emerald Coast Hospice. We're going to talk to Margo about all this and more when we come back, and we will be right back. All right, we'll let it go at that. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guest today is Margo Lamb from Emerald Coast Hospice. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here again.
We had Sunshine on the calendar. You guys showed up together. She said, Margo's going to be on instead of me.
Yeah.
You know, she says she wanted you to talk about your things, but I think maybe it was probably because she didn't have time to put on makeup or get the right outfit on this morning. What do you think?
I think it was, yeah.
We appreciate you guys. You know, we extended the offer back, a year ago, I guess, talked to you guys about, come on, at least semi-irregularly, talk about hospice. You know, it's amazing, even after you coming on the show every month like you have, people still being somewhat unaware of what hospice is. It's got a negative connotation for a lot of the right reasons, but only because people don't know what all it entails. We're always excited when we change things up. Sunshine's been doing a great job. Let me give her a plug to you. You've been doing a great job representing Emerald Coast Hospice and explaining exactly what you guys are doing in the community outside of hospice services. And I think that's where that bigger picture is, Margo, is your involvement in that community. One great example of that is, I'm calling it your bereavement camp. I know it has a different name. You've actually spoken about it in the past. Amanda Harkrider came on with you at one time and spoke about that. Talk about what that's all about.
Sure. Well, it's exciting. It's a camp called Camp I Believe, and it is a bereavement camp for kids, and it is free for any child ages 7 to 14, and we do allow some leeway there for ages. If there's a brother and a sister or cousins or something and they're 6 years old or 15, and we will allow a little bit of leeway there. What it is geared for, Paul, is to bring in children that have suffered a loss, basically a death of a loved one. It doesn't have to be their parent. It can be any loss that they have suffered, and it doesn't have to be within a certain time span. It could be a year ago. It could be, 5 months ago. And so what we do is we encourage them to give us a call, first of all, and talk to us about what's going on and let us know from the guardian standpoint what the child's going through. We review all the applications, and we have never had to turn a child away, which we're very excited about that. We can take up to 50 children and sometimes more depending on our staffing. And all of the staff that attends are volunteers. They could be people like me that work for Emerald Coast Hospice, but they come as a volunteer basis. And so we're there volunteering our time and giving back to the community to let them know that we're here for them and for their families. And a lot of times, it is a lot of our hospice families who will reach out to us and say, we have a grandchild and they were very close with their grandpa and we really want them to come to the camp. Tell us a little bit about it. And so that's when we go into detail of what the camp offers, and it does offer a lot.
Now, the camp is actually held in Marianna?
It is. This will be, well, I've been with the company 4 years, and I've been working the camp every year that I've been here. It's been in Marianna several years, and that's our goal, is to keep it local so that we can give our local communities the first chance to come to camp. Transportation at this point is not provided, so that's another way that these children that are in Washington, Holmes, Jackson, Calhoun, all these local communities can get to this fantastic camp with just the utmost, top-notch bereavement coordinators, social workers, chaplains, folks that are really going to help them. Our motto is play, grow, heal. And so that's the goal of the camp, is to get the kids talking about what's bothering them, because let's face it, as much as kids want to stand out and be different, they really don't. They want to feel just like their peer in the school seat next to them. They want to know that they're not alone, that someone else has gone through a loss like they have, because it makes them feel more normal. And that, at the end of the day, is what they want.
And you sort of answered what was going to be my next question, and that is, it's held in Marianna, but it's not open to just Jackson County kids. You mentioned several of the other counties. From which counties, or is there any limit as far as the geographical area from which they can come?
There is no limit whatsoever. We've had kids from Bainbridge, Georgia. We've had kids from Panama City. We've had kids from Pensacola. They do a camp in Pensacola, but sometimes it doesn't work out with their weekends, depending on when theirs is versus when ours is. We will take children from Minnesota if they're down here visiting family. As long as they fill out the application gets approved, and they have everything set up in order to come in. So
now, what are the exact dates of the camp?
The camp this year is August 25th through the 27th. That's a Friday to a Sunday. We start bringing the kids in around 3:30. They can be dropped off by their guardian, and we register them. They go through a check-in process with the nurses, or if they have any medicines or any types of allergies or anything at all that they need to be aware of. We have RNs on staff throughout the camp, and we have the Chipola nursing students checked in the kids last year. So it was a great opportunity for them to work the registration and get that volunteering experience, and they really enjoyed it. And then we have our head nurses there that stay the whole weekend. And then we do just a huge itinerary of activities. It starts Friday afternoon and it goes until just before lunch on Sunday. They spend the night.
So that's the weekend before Labor Day?
It is.
Okay.
I believe it is. Yep, 25th through the 27th.
Okay. Looking at the calendar, you are already into the school year at that point. And in the pre-show, you mentioned it's easier to get these kids' attention and parents' attention, being that they already are back in that sort of regimented frame of mind, being back in school, versus people who are scattered willy-nilly and on vacation, who knows where. So you're actually dealing with people while they're back home versus in that vacation mode. Have you always done it with that kind of a time frame?
Yeah, most often we have. We did have the camp, I think, a few years in the month of July, and that was pretty well attended. I believe that camp was over where they hold Camp Tempucci, and we had such a great turnout from the Marianna, Chipley, surrounding Jackson, all the different counties in the area, that they decided they would hold a camp in Marianna. And so we've been very, very fortunate to have the camp here. And we just feel like once the kids are back in that structured schedule a little bit, maybe it's easier for the families to, let them go and be gone a weekend and that kind of thing, because it's a big deal. The kids don't have to have had anyone on hospice services. The kids could have suffered a loss of a family member that had been killed in a car accident. We have had some, like you said, pull at your heart, tug at your heartstrings is true. I have cried every year at camp that I've worked, not in front of the kids. It's a happy, sad time, and you really gain a new perspective on what these poor children have gone through. We had one family lost both their mother and their father within, I think it was 6 or 9 months of each other. It was just a horrific thing, and those kids really, really grew from the camp. And they learn a lot. If I could just take 1 minute to explain something, one of the exercises that they did at the camp last year with the younger kids, the 7 to 10-year-olds, might even have been 7 to 9, they had them lay down on a piece of full-size paper and they traced the outside of their body, and then they stood up and they gave the kids like 5 crayons, and each color crayon represented an emotion. And it was amazing to see them. One child who would not speak at all to her mom about her father's loss, she was only 8. She colored her face completely red, which meant anger. And it just brought out so much for the mom. The mom, the parents come at the end of the camp and they talk to the bereavement coordinators and the spiritual coordinators and talk about, what they learned from the children and that kind of thing. And the mom had no idea that she was ever mad about it. She was really, really angry. And so it brought out some new subjects for her to be able to talk to the little girl about. And she keeps in touch with me regularly, and they're doing very good, and they want to come back this year, so they might.
It's tough enough to get adults to open up and to express anger and emotions. I went through EMS, and I know with nursing, same way. You learn about death and dying, and you learn about the stages of that process. And it's tough enough to get adults to open up to that.
Yes.
But I would imagine that it's really a challenge, and if not addressed, could potentially cause long-term issues. Is that correct?
Yeah, it definitely can. And Gino Mayo is one of our chaplains, and he is just a phenomenal speaker about the different stages of grief. And he does a little activity with the older kids, and that I think ages even harder as they get to those teen years. Again, the not wanting to feel different. And he has them drop food coloring into a big fish bowl and talks about how all of that is just a huge pool of emotions. And it can cause some very long-term effects, I would think. I'm not a counselor, but I'm sure that if you didn't deal with grief, it would eventually, come up and kick you in the butt, so to speak. But I do think that grief is a situation that we all deal with it at a different level. The way you deal with a loss is going to be different than the way I do, and your way may not be right, and my way may not be right, but it may work for us. And I know Gino has always said there's no right or wrong way to deal with it, but the best thing you can do is just chip away at it day by day and not let it build up, because eventually you'll unleash it in probably a lot of different ways. So
I know that Emerald Coast Hospice has their own group of chaplains and counselors and so forth that you use every day in your normal work. Is that the pool from which you draw for the counselors for this camp?
It is. We have 4 chaplains and a bereavement coordinator, and most all of them are going to be present at the camp. We also use our social workers. We use bereavement coordinators and social workers from other hospice, whether it be Emerald Coast. We're open to anyone that's interested in being a volunteer if there's a need there. And I never turn a volunteer away. I'll find a place for them. The requirements are they have to be 18 years old, and then they have to go through an orientation with me, which is the camp orientation. It's not terribly long. You go through a video that has to do with traveling in pairs of 3. Nobody ever travels alone with a child. It's always, 2 or 3 people together. Not 2 or 3, 3 people together at all times. And so we take it very seriously. We are very, very, what's the word I'm trying to say? Just aware of what needs to be done in order to make the camp successful. But yes, most of the bereavement coordinators and chaplains and staff come from Emerald Coast Hospice.
You say you have room for 50, more or less, children. Do you top out at that? Have you had a full house most of the time?
We have. We've had 1 or 2 camps where weather has been an issue, and maybe some kids couldn't make it, or just schedule changes have happened, and we've had a couple no-shows. But overall, all the kids that sign up typically come, and we've been filling up and having a really good turnout. And we encourage anybody that's interested in knowing more about the camp to get a hold of us. The best number to call me at would be 850-526-3577, and that's the Marianna office. And I work out of both Marianna and Chipley. And any member of the Emerald Coast Hospice team knows about camp, I believe. And so you could just ask them, who do I talk to? And they could give them information about it as well.
How do you recruit the attendees? I would imagine that being that school is open, that guidance counselors and school personnel certainly would be one source. Preachers, chaplains, priests in churches.
Yes.
What other group of people would be those who refer these kids?
You know, strangely enough, one of the places that we do go to are the funeral homes. We let them know we have this camp because obviously they see as much of it as anyone, and it isn't just hospice patients, families that we take. It is anybody's loss that we would like to help. And so we do go to the funeral homes and talk to them. We talk to a lot of different senior groups. I was just up at one in Graceville this morning and talked to them for an hour about the camp. And, you know, I said, you may not have a family member that needs the camp, but your neighbor may know someone that has a family member that needs the camp. And so I really encourage people to take the flyers that we have, pass them out in their communities, in their church, in restaurants, you know, coffee clubs, all that kind of stuff, because it's all different types of people that would be able to use this camp.
Tell me again what the age range is.
It's ages 7 to 14 and give or take. You know, I mean, like I said, if we have someone that's 8 years old that has a brother that's 15 and he won't come without his brother, we'll typically always let that sibling come along.
Now, have you already got a waiting list? Have you already got a bunch of people who want to attend?
We have several kids from last year's camp that want to come back, and so we try to find the need. And I know that doesn't sound fair, because how do you measure grief? But if they've already attended the camp and we have other children that have not, we try to give those other kids an opportunity first. So we're starting to get a few interested campers at this time, and we've just started reaching out to our guidance counselors again and those folks. So we'll start to see things come in, and the TV show will help as well.
I would imagine if you had a child who did attend in the past, especially if they were a little bit older in age, that they might be a good candidate for a semi-volunteer.
Yep.
They're still going through the cathartic process, but I would imagine that on occasion you find a value in having those experienced children there to sort of help those who maybe are harder to get out of their shell. Better that child-to-child relationship versus an adult sometimes. Absolutely.
We had a camper. It was a girl, and she went to the camp 2 years in a row, and we've had a release sign that we're allowed to talk about it, and so I can. Rayleigh came to our camp, and she had suffered a tremendous loss. Her dad had passed away very unexpectedly in a very traumatic way, and she was very hesitant on coming to the camp. And I believe she was in 5th grade the first year she came, so that would make her about 11 years old. And she was scared to death, but her mom brought her into our office and sat down, and I told her about the camp, and I told her I would be right there the entire time, that her mom would be welcome to reach out to me if there was a need, and vice versa. And we do try to encourage the kids not to, you know, be in contact with the parents. There's no cell phones, things like that, no photo taking. It's a very, very confidential camp for good reason. They're going through a lot. And Rayleigh begged to come back the next year, and we let her. And I would love to make her almost like a junior camp leader, something of that line. And so we're working on that right now with our executive directors up above the camp, and just talking about the need for that type of situation, because you're right, they do open up to the kids sometimes better than the adults.
Yeah, and if the opportunity presents, perhaps in the future, someone like this young lady to which you refer, or someone like her would be a good candidate to come on the show and talk a little bit. I know that
she would love it.
Within the constraints of confidentiality and
Yeah.
privacy, but even someone watching this show, finding out that there is this kind of a resource, and then having that child be the one explain, sometimes there's a huge value there too.
She would love it. The Panama City news station came and interviewed her after the camp that Sunday, and her mom signed off on the release and really talked for a while about her experience, and it was very emotional, and she did a newspaper article. It was very good. I'd love to bring her on here. She would really have a lot to offer the viewers.
Yeah, let's follow up on that.
Will do.
So coming up August 25th, the weekend before Labor Day, school's already back in session. Camp, I believe. This is how many years?
Oh gosh.
Lots.
Teens, yes.
Okay.
Several, long before I started.
Okay.
Yep.
If you have a young child in your life who may have gone through some kind of trauma, through some kind of emotional loss, obviously this is set up for someone who has gone through that loss process, but I would imagine that there could be other traumatic situations which could be of benefit, even if it wasn't a loss of a loved one.
Well, what they try to do, Paul, is they do try to keep it to the description of the death of a loved one, because they do focus a lot on what actually comes after someone dies, and not like spiritually or anything, but more like the different stages of what you're going through versus maybe, mom's gone for a while, but she may come back in 6 months kind of thing. So we do focus it on the death of a loved one, but it can be anyone. It does not have to be immediate family. It can be, anyone that the child is suffering a loss. So, yeah.
Many times a friend can be closer than a
Absolutely.
family member. Thanks for coming and talking about it. I would like you to consider maybe coming back following the camp. Let's talk a little bit about how this year went, and maybe we'll see what we can do to even help you further the following year. But thanks for coming this morning.
Yeah, thank you. And I do want to mention real quickly that there's more to the camp than just the serious small group activities. There's kayaking, swimming, canoeing, roasting marshmallows. They have an Olympic-sized pool at the facility we're going to be at this year. And so there's a lot of fun games and scavenger hunts and things like that go on that the kids really have a good time. They don't want to leave. They really don't. You'll find out when Rayleigh comes and visits. They don't want to leave. And I want to take them all home with me, so they're sweet.
Our guest today has been Margo Lamb from Emerald Coast Hospice, talking about Camp I Believe. It's a yearly camp held in Marianna, hosted by Emerald Coast Hospice. If you want to find out more, you can certainly contact one of the Emerald Coast Hospice offices, either in Chipley or Marianna. Margo mentioned her number earlier. I doubt you remember that or will remember it, but you can certainly look up Emerald Coast Hospice, call 411, get their contact information, either ask for Margo or anyone else who works at either location. Certainly an opportunity, and there are very few of these around. I doubt that I have heard of any other facility offering this kind of an opportunity. I like the fact that it could have been a year ago even. If there's a young one who's still having problems, and sometimes that can be very obvious, but we all wring our hands and say, what can we do? Sounds like this is a great opportunity to just take hands off and let nature take its course. I think that the gathering of that multitude of kids really is probably the healing part.
It is.
As much as the adult speaking to them.
So. It's the children with the children.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.